I know what not to do, I know how to lose, and I know how to break a heart. I learned it all from you. But that's okay, yeah, that's just fine. I'll learn to breathe underwater, to stay away from fire. I wish you stayed, 'cause I've been tired. And if he won't be here now, I'll find my father in a Bible. Father in a Bible.
And growing up without a father, you end up learning from what isn't there, right? And instead of being taught how to love or how to lead, you're kind of stuck figuring out what not to do. And I remember feeling like I had to navigate so many things alone. Man, this this video is powerful, right? And it takes me back to that little kid, that little boy who felt lost out there on that little league baseball field, playing catch with my mom, right? And wondering why I was playing with my mom and all the other kids were playing catch with their dads. I remember thinking to myself, why isn't my dad here? In those moments, and they stick with you, that shame, that rejection, the confusion. They find their way, they weave their way through so many parts of your life. And I'm talking about my life. And today I'm reacting to a song that we just listened to that's really gone viral. It's written by a young kid, such a stud, Jonas, about growing up without a father. And for me, being raised by a single mom, this song captures so much of the journey, right? The hurt, the questions, the false confidence that sometimes it gets built up, definitely along the journey, along the way. And so stick with me until the end of this video, because we're gonna dive deep. We're going deep sea diving into the reality of fatherlessness. It's an epidemic in this country and world, and the brokenness, the wake of brokenness it leaves behind. And I want to preface this video before I go any further and say thank you. A moment to say thank you to my stepdad, Mike, and my late grandfather, Angelo, who stepped in, who stepped up when my biological father wasn't there. Of course, they couldn't replace that role fully, but their love, their presence, their actions, every single day, it left a mark. And I carry that impact with me to this day. And so thank you so much. And so without further ado, let's dive into these lyrics from Jonah Connor's song. And let's unpack what it's really like to grow up with a dad. And so song clip number 1, the lyrics say, I know what not to do. I know how to lose. I know how to break a heart because I learned from you. Okay, we're getting deep here. That lyric, it hits hard. And growing up without a father, you end up learning from what isn't there, right? And instead of being taught how to love or how to lead, you're kind of stuck figuring out what not to do. And I remember feeling like I had to navigate so many things alone, especially as you get into those adolescent years, figuring out how to act, figuring out how to treat people appropriately. And honestly, I got it wrong a lot of the time, because without a guide, it's just so easy to repeat the same broken patterns. And even if it's the last thing you want to do, right? It's like a subconscious thing. It's a bit like, okay, being handed a broken compass. And you're like, hey, here's this broken compass. And someone's telling you, okay, find your way home, right? How are you going to do that? So, I came face to face with this whole reality when I got married and became a father. It became real then. And on the surface, it seemed simple, like the idea of marriage, right? It's the American dream. Why wouldn't I want that? But once I said I do, and then my firstborn, my daughter Genesis, came into the world, it's like all of a sudden these waves just hit me. Waves of inadequacy, waves of fear. They just came, almost blindsiding me. And I hadn't seen any of this modeled, right? It became apparent in that moment that, man, I didn't know what a healthy father looked like or a healthy husband. and I had no idea how to do it. And so these things, like being a husband and a father, they aren't just things you learn from reading or watching. They're things that you must experience. They're things that are shown to you from fathers and mentors and leaders. My old pastor said, certain things they cannot be taught but only caught. Okay? It's just the reality of what it is. And diving right into the next song clip, he says this. He says, "I don't know how to ride a bike. I suppose I'll teach myself." This line, man, it just nails it. Because growing up without a dad, it meant I had to teach myself so many different things. And it wasn't just about learning to ride a bike, it was figuring out how to shave. It was trying to understand what it even meant to be a real man, and constantly wrestling with questions that I didn't have answers for. And so looking back, I can see, and I have to say this, thank you, Mom. I can see how much my mom carried on her own, right? She had to do it, single mom. She was the Cub Scout leader, the Little League mom, working full time, all the while trying to be everything for us. And I'm so grateful for her, but I also know it wasn't supposed to be like that, right? Family isn't designed to work like that. That's not how God created the family dynamic. And no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't fully replace the father figure I longed for. Okay? It's just it just can't happen. There's a deficit there, right? That's just the way it was. And my dad started off strong, okay? But somewhere along the way he fell into the trap, into drugs, into alcohol. And some of the hardest memories of my childhood were getting these birthday cards. They were cards from him in an attempt to build relationship and connect, which is great. But he misspelled my name. Imagine that, right? Your own dad, not even sure how to spell your name. And that just hurt. It left this gap in me. And of course, I wanted that connection. And I think that started this lifelong need for approval from male mentors, bosses, pastors, leaders. Because growing up without my dad, it just left a void that I can hear echoed through every stage of my life, reminding me of what I missed and honestly what I kept searching for, even still to this day at 36 years old. It's hard. So moving on to the next clip of the song, lyrics say, "All I've got is an empty frame that sits upon a shelf." That line, the empty frame, wow, that's a powerful image, because growing up, I felt like I was walking around with this invisible gap or hole that everyone could see, like this void. And I wasn't just carrying my dad's absence, I was carrying all the questions that came with it. Like, was I not good enough for him to stay? Right? That's a fair question for a child. And that absence over time starts to feel like rejection. And that rejection, it turns into shame. It's like you wear it without even realizing it. It's this deep subconscious thing that you walk around in. You know, it's just there. And since my dad wasn't around, we didn't spend much time with the Swiss Helm side of the family. Family gatherings were full of relatives with different last names than my brother and myself. And in those moments, in those parties, I kind of felt like an outcast. I found myself wishing I were a Rossoni or an Ellis. And that shame, that longing led me definitely into a bit of an identity crisis. So I was on a search for love and acceptance, and I started looking, of course, in all the wrong places, through drugs, through alcohol, through relationships. And here's the irony of it all. These patterns repeat generation after generation. unless divine intervention happens, unless Christ steps in and breaks the curse, breaks the cycle. And it's totally possible. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But moving on to the next song, clip, and lyric, he says, "Something's missing, but that's okay. That's just fine." And these lyrics, they capture that survival mindset, right? You tell yourself you're fine, right? You're fine. Everything's going to be okay. And even when you're not, you build these facades, you build these walls around that emptiness, and you convince yourself you don't need anyone. But deep down, that survival mode builds. It builds on such a shaky foundation, such a shaky foundation. It's hard. It's hard. And I know for me, the root of fatherlessness led me to struggle with something a lot of therapists call performance orientation. It might be a good thing in the world of business, but in real life, it sucks. And it's this belief that love is earned by what you do and what you achieve. And when I got saved at 24 years old, and eventually I decided to step into ministry, was called into ministry, my pastor at the time became a spiritual father figure, right? I craved his approval, and I found myself working hard, not just for his validation, but to feel loved by God even, right? That's how deep that root went. And over the years, I've realized that worth isn't something you earn. It's found in God's love. God's unconditional, in the Greek, it's agape love. That's where validation is found. That's where identity is found. That's where approval is found. It's found in the love and in the arms and in the grace and in the mercy of Jesus Christ. That's where it's found. In the next song clip, he says this. He says, "I'll learn to breathe underwater and stay away from the fire." And this line, it's not just about survival, it's about resilience. Because growing up, I know I had to be self-sufficient, especially as I got older. You got to make things happen. You got to pull yourself up from your bootstraps. And that's the upside, I suppose, right? That's the silver lining. But fatherlessness does that. It makes you resilient because you have to be, right? But it came with a lot of trial and a lot of error, a lot of bumps, a lot of failure along the way. Definitely, definitely, definitely. And next in the song, he says this. He says, "I wish you'd stay because I've been tired. If you won't be here now, I'll find my father in a Bible. I'll find my father in a Bible. Because if you can't be there for me, because our earthly fathers, they're not perfect like Jesus. They're flawed. A lot of them are so great and they deserve to be honored. But no matter what, we will always have our earthly father." In this line, it's different. There's so many times that I wish my father would just show up. You know, that tiredness, that weight of feeling abandoned, you know, emotionally, spiritually, it weighs you down. But this line about finding a father in the Bible, it's a reminder that even if we didn't have an earthly dad, especially, there for us, we can find our true father in God. I remember the first time that I found God, it changed everything. God's love, it truly did fill that empty frame in my life. And it didn't happen all at once. And it didn't mean that all the pain just disappeared, but it gave me something that I never had, a sense of being. And I remember, you know, telling myself for the very first time when I met the Lord and I felt his presence, I said, "This right here is what I've been searching for my entire life." And in a moment of worship, a moment in the presence of God, that void was filled. I'd met my father, and I've never been the same since. And God can do absolutely anything. And so I know that if you're watching this and you're feeling the depths of and the pain of fatherlessness, you're not alone, and God is with you and for you. And if you have any questions, please reach out, comment below. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to pray for you. But God can do absolutely anything, and His love is unconditional. And just appreciate you tuning in. Thanks so much for watching. If you've been blessed by this content, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it with someone in need, and we'll see you on the next one.